How efficient is
the dreaded patriarchy?
To answer this ever so complicated question, we first need to define
Patriarchy!
No, not that definition. The superior, intellectual, intersectional feminist definition. Patriarchal society. Feminist theories of patriarchy. A patriarchal society consists of male-dominated power structure throughout organized society and in individual relationships. When modern historians and sociologists describe a patriarchal society, they mean that men hold the positions of power, head of the family unit, leaders of social groups, boss in the workplace, and heads of government. We of course already know that men in positions of power only care about the interests of other men, and not women at all, and that the only way to reach true gender equality is to have exactly 50% women in government. If you don't agree with me that women not wanting to be politicians as much as men is a big problem, then you are a misogynistic bigot.
So you would dismiss as thoughtless any complaint against a society that had only one woman in the Senate?
I wouldn't dismiss it. I would simply say, if there is evidence that you have, let us see that evidence. What I think is really tragic is that assertions have been made not only without evidence being offered, but without anyone even asking for evidence. It's as if these are self-evident truths that have been brought down from the mountainside.
There are only 27 female CEOs in the Fortune 1000, and only 18.5% of Congress is occupied by women.
And I'm saying that the people who made the case the other way, or who've acted as if they made the case, typically have not felt the necessity even to bring evidence. They say there's one woman in the Senate, therefore.
And you might say that more women should run or start their own company.
Well, in a country where I think just over half the people are women, that if they wanted to fill the Senate with women, they could very well do it.
That's ignoring the reality that women have to face large amounts of discrimination and harassment simply because their gender is seen as less powerful or less credible.
All sorts of things are possible. It's also possible that there are other reasons why women don't choose to get into positions like politics, because they have a set of demands which are very tough for most women to meet, and at the same time do the other things that most women do, such as raise children and so on.
Women choosing not to be politicians is completely unacceptable. And the fact that women are the majority of voters at 54% and can vote for whoever they want is completely irrelevant. The same number of vaginas and penises represented in government is the number one factor in determining how much gender equality a country has achieved. So let's see where the US ranks.
The US are number 69 in the top ranking percentage of women in their government list. Now, that's fine, but the US ranks behind such countries as Tajikistan.
This is my country of Kazakhstan. It's nice.
Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Uganda. But no. Women in the West have nothing to complain about. They have equality.
That's amazing. The United States should start immediately following the leading example set by the Middle East and how they value women. If and when the United States does that, women in the West would be much, much closer to reaching gender equality. It is not as though that this pointless list should serve as a clear indication that more women in government means absolutely nothing regarding equal rights for women. I've clearly demonstrated that since 80% of the US politicians have a penis, that we live in a patriarchal system that tries to systematically oppress women. Since men can only care about the interest of other men, and not women, of course. So let's take a look at how efficiently the
patriarchy
is at valuing men over women. The first way I thought the patriarchal government would oppress women would be to take money away from them and give it to men. But it turns out that men pay the overwhelming majority of taxes, while women, on the other hand, receive the vast majority of benefits. So the
patriarchy
is pretty inefficient when it comes to redistributing the wealth more to men. The second thing I thought our patriarchal society would do is value the lives of men over women.
In patriarchal societies, cisgender men are typically valued over cisgender women.
This is where we get the commonly used expression, fuck the women and children, every man for himself.
For the time being, I shall require only women and children.
But the statistics, on the other hand, they seem to be telling an entirely different story. Women's health receives over 4 times the funding of men's health, $833 million to $200 million from 2003 to 2012, even though men live on average 5 years shorter and are also more likely to die from cancer. Men also almost exclusively do the most dangerous jobs, like logging, fishing, and roofing, which results in 93% of workplace deaths being male. Men are also the ones risking their lives protecting others from harm, being most of the firefighters, police officers, and military personnel. Our patriarchal society is actually so insanely inefficient at valuing men over women, it is almost like the exact opposite is true, that men actually value women's lives more than their very own. It is also important to point out that
patriarchy
negatively affects everybody, including men, and that everybody, even women, contribute to the oppression of women.
It's also important to note that patriarchy isn't solely male-perpetuated. Just like how everyone is negatively affected by the patriarchy is perpetuated by everybody. Nobody is outside of societal influence, and we've all been socialized to have patriarchal views of gender and how people should be.
How about the efficiency when it comes to oppressing women under the law? It turns out to be extremely inefficient. Men lose 84% of custody battles and pay 97% of alimony. Men also serve longer sentences for the exact same crime. After controlling for the arrest offense, criminal history, and other prior characteristics, men receive 63% longer sentences on average than women do. Women are also twice as likely to avoid incarceration if convicted.
Sexism is about exclusion and unequal power in society. It's about discrimination between individuals that bleeds into the workplace and into the law, and into the law, and into the law.
How about the concern for the most vulnerable people in society? Surely, our patriarchal society will be helping out the men in that regard. However, men are an estimated 75% of the homeless, and 1/3 of those being military vets. An estimated 40% of domestic violence victims are men, but less than 1% of the shelters are for men. Call me crazy, but it seems that the
patriarchy
is so inefficient that it actually appears it discriminates against men and in favor of women. But does that mean it's sexist against men?
Is this sexism against men? It's about shaming, belittling, and devaluing the feminine. The feminine. The feminine.
Of course it's not sexist against men. You cannot discriminate based on gender when it is against the male gender. The only logical explanation is that our patriarchal society is so bad at oppressing women that it accidentally hits the wrong target in men. But even though men are the ones being discriminated against, women are still the primary victims because men are the ones writing the laws. If this doesn't make any sense to you, and you find it to be laughably stupid, well,
You just don't get it because you're not smart enough. Let's move!